Do you constantly find yourself stressing while moving towards your blessing? If so, stay tuned and I will teach you how to stop operating in anxiousness today. What is going on, everyone? We are back for another episode of Prospering with Christ. I hope that you had a wonderful week last week, and I hope that this week will be just as amazing to you as well. So, for today's episode, we are discussing breaking the chains of anxiousness. I wanted to talk about this today because on this channel, we discuss a lot about moving and doing things God's way. And it's important for you to understand that as you are moving and you're doing things God's way and you're following His plans, that process is not going to be easy. And that process might bring out a lot of emotions in you. When you are moving God's way, you are literally surrendering your control. You are surrendering how you want to do things. You are surrendering your plans. You are surrendering your opinions. You are surrendering your thoughts. You are literally giving up your rights and signing them over to God so that He can lead you. And in a Christian community, we talk about this like this is an easy thing to do. We make it sound so easy to give up ourselves, to give up how we want to do things, to go against what we see, to fully follow God. We make it sound like it's so easy to follow a plan that doesn't make sense, to follow a plan that does not look like it's going to work out, to follow a plan where it does not look like anything is moving and go against things that make sense to us and go against plans that probably will work better for us. We make it seem like surrendering our will, surrendering how we want to do things, surrendering our opinions and giving that up to follow God and do things God's way is an easy process, but it's not. When you are doing things God's way, it is very easy to start feeling anxious. It's hard to stay patient when you are unsure how things are going to work out. It's hard to stay patient when you know that time is running out. You have to the end of the month to pay that bill. You have to the end of the month till your car gets repoed. You have 2 more months until you need to find another job. It looks like time is running out. You're following God's way. You're doing things God's way. You're unsure if He's going to come through. You're unsure if He's even moving. It looks like you're trusting Him and He's not doing anything. It is so easy to give into anxiousness, and it is so hard to stay patient and be confident when you are in a season like that. I am here today to remind you that while you are on this journey, while you are taking this journey of trusting God and moving by faith, anxiousness is going to come up. It is completely normal for you to be in a state of anxiousness. It is completely normal for you to be in a state of anxiety. And although it's normal for those feelings to arise, although it's normal for you to start feeling that way, you do not want to give in to that feeling. You do not want to stay in that anxiousness. You do not want to operate from a place of anxiousness. See, we have to understand that it's okay to feel it, but how you deal with those feelings and how you operate in those feelings is where the problem comes in. As you begin to feel anxiousness, you have to learn how to release it. Because if you hold on to it, it will keep you in bondage. See, for a lot of people, we wonder why we are still in the same place. We wonder why God is not moving in our lives. We wonder why we're not making any progress. And it is because we have been giving into the wrong emotions. See, the reason why you are so anxious is because you do not trust God. The reason why you are so anxious is because you do not have faith. If you truly trusted that God was going to bring you through, if you truly trusted that God was going to show up on time, if you truly trusted that God was going to do it, if you truly trusted that you were going to make it out, you would stand confidently, you would stand firmly, you will walk in every circumstance with your head held high, you will walk in every situation with your head held high. But the reason why you have anxiety, the reason why you are eager, the reason why you are anxious is because you do not trust God. You are worried. The reason why you are anxious is because you are worried. You are stressing about if this is going to work. You are stressing about if God is going to come through. You are stressing about if you are going to make it out of this circumstance. And as long as you continue to operate from those feelings, as long as you continue to accept the anxiousness, not release it, but accept that anxiousness and operate from that feeling, you will never see God's hand move in your life. See, we fail to realize that a lot of us move based on how we feel. And so if we feel anxiousness, if we feel anxiety from our unbelief, we are moving and we are operating from that feeling. And when God is calling you to do things by faith, you cannot operate in faith if you have anxiousness. You cannot operate in faith if you have anxiousness because you don't trust God, because you don't have faith. It's going to affect the way that you move. It's going to affect the way that you follow God. And because you are not following God by faith, that is the reason why you are not seeing results. Anxiousness is going to keep you bound up. Anxiousness is going to hinder how God can move in your life, how God can use you on this earth, what God can do for you. Anxiousness is going to keep you stuck. And if you really want to walk with God, if you really want to experience the greatness that God has for you, if you really want to see God's hand move in your life, you're going to have to do the work to release anxiousness. You're going to have to break the chains of anxiousness and learn how to truly trust God and follow Him in faith. Following God in anxiousness is not going to work. Because when you move from a place of anxiousness, that anxiety blocks your discernment and it clouds your judgment. God speaks to us in a plethora of ways. But if you think back to all the times when God speaks to you, no matter how He spoke it, if He spoke it to you directly, if He spoke it to you through another person, if He spoke it to you on a commercial, no matter how He spoke it, when you think back to all the times that God has spoke something to you, you may notice that He said it in a time where you least expected it. God likes to speak to us when we least expect it because we are in a calm state of mind. Have you ever noticed that when you're in a state of having a lot of emotions, you're sad, you're depressed, you're angry, you're anxious, you just have all these negative emotions. This is the time where it's not only harder to hear God, it's even harder to feel God. The reason why that is because the devil likes to play off of our negative emotions. He knows how to come in and use our negative emotions against us. He knows how to come in and use our negative emotions to confirm insecurities that we already had, to confirm unbelief that we already had, to pump fear inside of us. He knows how to use our negative emotions, how to use circumstances and things around us that's bringing those negative emotions to us. He knows how to use that to speak to us, to tell us what He wants us to hear. And He knows that we are more prone to listen to Him than to listen to God. So if He can get inside our head at our most vulnerable states, if He can get inside of our heads when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling depressed, when we're feeling angry, if He can get inside of our heads when we're going through that tough circumstance, when we experience that failure, when we messed up and made that mistake, that he knows that we're going to focus our attention on him more than we're going to focus our attention on God, because what he is telling us matches up to what we were already feeling. What God is saying to us does not match up to what we are feeling. We feel worthless, and God is telling us that we are more than enough. God is telling us that we are deserving, but we don't feel that way. So we will rather focus our attention to the devil, because the devil is matching what we already feel. The devil is confirming how we already feel. It's already hard for us to believe what God is saying. So we focus our attention more onto what the devil is saying, more onto the ways the devil is speaking to us than the ways that God is speaking to us. That is the reason why it is so hard for us to discern God in tough circumstances and when we have these negative emotions. And I say all this to say that anxiousness is a negative emotion. Anxiousness is a sign that you already don't trust God. Anxiousness is a sign that you are afraid, you are stressed, you are worried, you are doubting. Anxiousness is a negative emotion. And so when you start feeling anxiousness and you accept that anxiousness and you start operating from a place of anxiousness and you sit in a place of anxiousness, it is going to be so hard for you to discern God, because there are so many things that is blocking God from getting into you. See, when you start operating from these negative emotions, it is building up a wall. There is a wall in between you and God. There is a brick wall, a wall full of worry, a wall full of stress, a wall full of insecurities, a wall full of angry, a wall full of anxiety. And that wall is blocking you and God from getting to each other. Every time you cry out to God, the wall is in between. You are wondering why you cannot hear him. You are wondering why you cannot discern him. But God is saying, because you have put up this wall, and this wall is full of things that do not match me. This wall is full of things that do not align with me. Every time I try and speak life into you, it runs into the wall and bounce back to where I am. It cannot get through to you. It cannot get to you. You cannot hear it. You cannot feel it. These negative emotions that you are sitting in is putting up a wall. It's building a wall, and it's blocking you from being able to hear me. And not only is it blocking me, but you're not even focused on me. In this place of anxiety, you don't want to hear that everything is going to be okay. You don't want to hear that I'm going to come through for you. You don't want to hear that everything's going to work out. You don't want to hear that the promises I gave you is going to happen. You want to hear everything that confirms your anxiety. You want to hear everything that matches your anxiousness. You want to hear everything that confirms your unbelief. So not only is this wall blocking me, but your focus is also not on me. Your anxiousness is clouding your judgment. And you have been wondering why you cannot hear God. You have been wondering why you cannot feel God's presence. And God is saying, because you're trying to seek me from the wrong place. You're trying to seek me from a place of negative emotions. You're trying to seek me from a place of anxiety. You're trying to seek me from a place of unbelief. You're trying to seek me from a place of lack of trust. You're trying to seek me from a place of panic. And I do not operate in that. I do not align with that. You're not speaking my language. If you speak English and you try and go out and seek someone who only speaks Spanish, they're not going to understand you, because you're not speaking their language. You're not speaking a language that they can comprehend. You're not speaking a language that they understand. And the problem with you and your relationship with God, the problem with why you cannot hear God, the problem with why you feel so disconnected to God, is because you are not speaking his language. God speaks a language of faith. He speaks a language of trust. He speaks a language of abundance. He speaks a language of positivity. But you've been trying to operate and speak to him in a language of worry. You've been trying to speak to him in a language of stress, of anxiety, of panic, of unbelief. And God is saying, until you learn how to adapt to my language, every time that you seek me, I'm not going to be able to understand you. Every time that you seek me, I'm not going to be able to fully help you, because you're not coming speaking the language that I need you to speak. And this is not to say that if you have these negative emotions, that if you turn to God, he will shun you away because he doesn't understand. You have to realize that there is a difference between giving those negative emotions to God for him to help you and trying to speak, trying to seek, and trying to operate in his ways from those emotions. When I give those emotions to God, I am admitting that these are wrong. I am admitting that I need help. I am admitting, hey, God, I don't know how to stop operating in this. I don't know how to stop worrying. I don't know how to stop stressing. I'm giving this to you so that you can help me do better. There's a difference between me doing that and me trying to follow God's plan from a state of worry, from a state of unbelief, from a state of anxiety. And because this anxiousness is blocking your discernment to God, it's also keeping you in a state of confusion. Have you ever been on the road to doing things God's way and you feel confused? It's like you know what God promised you. Sometimes you know what God told you to do, but you don't understand how to move into that. You don't understand how to put the pieces together to actually execute on that, to actually implement it. It's like you are trying to figure out how to make what God promised you happen. You are trying to figure out how to move in the things that God called you to do. You're trying to figure out how to do it on your own. I want to give you some real life examples so that this makes sense to you. You know that God called you to relocate, but you don't know how. You know that God called you to quit your job and start that ministry or start that business, but you don't know how. Maybe you know how to do it, but you don't know how to do it in a way to get it working. It's like you know what you are called to do. You have some pieces that you need to walk in. You have some pieces that you need to execute in, but you don't know how to put them together, make them make sense, and get the thing working. The reason why this happens is because we need God in every single step. We don't just need him to give us the blessing. We don't just need him to give us the plan. We need him to guide us every single step of the way in executing that plan, to guide us every single step of the way to getting to that breakthrough. We need him to be in the process of everything. We need him to be the guider in our life in everything. We need him to lead every single way, no matter how big, no matter how small it may be. And when you are operating from a place of anxiousness, and that anxiousness is clouding your judgment, that anxiousness is blocking your discernment, and these times where you need God to give you wisdom on how to take his plan and walk in it in a way that makes sense, walk in it in a way that's going to work, you cannot hear him because your anxiousness is blocking your discernment. Every time that he tries to speak to you, every time that he tries to give you an answer, every time that he tries to help you understand, every time he tells you to take this piece and put that piece right here, take this piece and put that piece together here, don't do this step first, do that one first. Every time he tries to tell you that, you can't hear him because you cannot discern him. Your anxiousness is blocking your discernment, which is putting you in a place of confusion. We get confused and then we automatically think that this did not come from God. Do you know how many times that I have been on Christian pages and they'll say something like, if this thing confuses you, if it's not making sense, if you're trying to operate in it and it's making you more confused than it's coming together, then that's a clear sign that it's not from God. And I want you to understand that that is not always true. Sometimes the things that you are doing is from God, but your emotions, your anxiety, your anxiousness is clouding your judgment and it's blocking you from being able to hear God. And that's the only reason why you're confused. You're confused because you're trying to figure this out yourself. You're confused because you're operating from a place of panic. You're confused because you're giving into the devil and you're not focusing your attention on God. You're confused because you're listening to the devil instead of spending time with God so that you can be close to him, so that even when he whispers, you can hear him. Even when he whispers, you can discern him. Confusion is not always a sign that God said no. Confusion is not always a sign that God did not anoint this. Sometimes you are confused because you are operating from the wrong place. And when you are operating from the wrong place and you are moving from a place of anxiousness, sometimes you are going to feel like you are forcing God's hand. When we move and we do things God's way, things naturally come together. God naturally speaks to us. God naturally opens our eyes and gives us understanding. God naturally gives us opportunities. Sometimes we will be moving into things. We will be working on things. We will be stepping out on faith. And we look back and we wonder, how did this come together? We look back and we wonder, how did that door open? How did I get that opportunity? I don't even have the skill set for that. I don't even have the credentials for that. I'm not even qualified for that, but God did it. Everything naturally comes together. It may not make sense immediately. We may have to move blindly, but as we start to move, as we start to operate in it, we will look back one day and we will wonder, how did we get here? But when you're operating from a place of anxiousness, things are not naturally falling together. You do not feel God's anointing when you are moving in this. You do not hear God. You do not hear him instructing you, guiding you, and leading you on what to do, where to go, what to do next, how to put this together, what's the next step you need to take. You do not feel him leading you in this season of blindness. You do not see him opening doors, opening opportunities, qualifying you for things you shouldn't be qualified for, accelerating your progress, accelerating your journey. You feel like you are forcing everything to happen. You are trying to force this thing to work. You are trying to force doors to open. You are trying to force opportunities. You are trying to force his answer. Sometimes it's not just about the things that you're doing. Sometimes you are seeking God for things. You are trying to get clarity on things and you are trying to force him to answer. It's like you are dragging your feet. You are draining yourself trying to make this thing work. It's not happening naturally. You cannot see that you are being guided. You cannot see that you are being led. You cannot see God moving. You cannot hear God instructing you. You are trying to force everything to come together on your own. And like I said, when this happened, a lot of people will tell you clearly what you're doing is not what God wants you to do. That may be the case, but sometimes it could just be that you're operating in the things that God is telling you to do from the wrong place. You're operating in the things that God is telling you to do from the wrong emotions. You're not moving by faith. You're not surrendering. You're not trusting him. You're not acting like a child who wants to be guided. You are still trying to hold on. You are operating from unbelief. You are operating from a place of anxiousness. And that's the reason why you're not seeing him move. That's the reason why it feels like you are forcing everything and you are not naturally being guided by him. And all of these things make that anxiousness that you're feeling way worse. Not being able to discern God, being confused, feeling like you have to force everything on top of already having anxiety. It is going to keep you in a state of panic. When you are operating in the things that God is telling you to do, you are not walking in confidently. You are not walking in trusting him. You are walking in panicking. You have anxiety. You are worried. You are in a state of panic. You are miserable. You are uncomfortable because you are operating from the wrong place. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Is this episode teaching you how to break the chains of anxiousness? If so, I want you to do me two favors. Favor number one, I want you to leave a review. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this episode. Leave an honest review and let me and others know how you are enjoying the show. And favor number 2, if you know anyone who has been trying to operate and do things God's way from a place of anxiousness, then I want you to send this episode to them. Let this episode motivate and encourage them the same way that it is motivating and encouraging you. Now let's get back to the show. The reason why it's so hard for us to break the chains of anxiousness is because anxiousness is our way of hiding from our need of desiring to be in control. Like I said earlier, in order for us to truly do things God's way, we have to give up ourselves. We have to surrender everything, surrender our will, surrender our plans, surrender our thoughts, surrender everything and follow God. We have to learn how to be the follower and not the leader. We have to learn how to not be in control over the situation. And the reason why this is hard for us is because we want to dictate everything. We want to dictate how it happens. We want to dictate when it happens. We want to dictate why it happens. We want to dictate where it happens. We want to dictate what happens. See, sometimes when you are doing things God's way, you are going to have to experience things that you don't want to experience. Maybe there are things that stretches you. Maybe there's things that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe there's things that doesn't feel good. Maybe there's failures that you have to go through. Maybe there's mistakes you have to learn from. Maybe there's hardships that you're going to have to drive through. There's things that you do not want to go through. And our need to be in control makes us want to dictate what we should have to go through. Because if it was up to us, I don't want to experience that failure. If it was up to us, I don't want to make that video because I'm insecure about the way I look. I don't want to put myself out there because I'm shy. I don't want to do things that way because it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to do anything that does not feel good to me. So I want to dictate why this happens. I want to dictate what happens. I only want to do things that feel good to me. I only want to do things that make me feel comfortable. I only want to do things that I like. We want to dictate everything. And the fact that we not only have to surrender our will, we have to surrender our ways, we also have to go through these really tough, uncomfortable seasons. And that anxiousness is us wanting to revoke our surrender. It's us wanting to revoke our surrender and take control of the wheel. When we're in that season where God is calling us to do something that's going to stretch us, He's calling us to do something that's going to make us uncomfortable. He's calling us to go through a failure. He's calling us to go through a hardship. That is the moment where we want to revoke our control and take matters into our own hand. We want to revoke our surrender and try and create our own plans. We want to revoke our surrender and try and figure everything out ourselves. And that is the reason why we are so anxious, because we are waiting on God impatiently. God, are you going to hurry up and get me out of this? God, are you going to hurry up and make a way? Or do I have to take matters into my own hand? You got to the end of the day to answer me. You got to the end of the day to make a way, or I'm going to look for a job, or I'm going to figure this out, or I'm going to go do what I think is best. Our anxiousness is our need to continue to be in control. And our anxiousness causes us to rush God. We are anxious because we want God to move on our time. Just think of the examples that I gave. You're anxious because you want to be in control. So you give God a deadline before you revoke your surrender and take matters into your own hands. God, I have to the end of the month to pay this bill. So if you do not answer me by Friday, I'm going to figure out how to pay this bill. God, you have this amount of time until I stop following your plans. Our anxiousness causes us to rush God. And some of you are going to listen to this and you're going to feel like this is right. Because if I have to the end of the month to pay that bill, why not rush God? I have to pay the bill or I'm going to be, evicted out my home or whatnot. But God sees your circumstance. And you have to trust and believe that God is going to answer you on time. God is going to make a way on time. But you want to know what causes God to move? Faith. And your anxiousness is lack of faith. And you have been wondering why God isn't moving. God sees time is running out. God sees you have to the end of the month. God sees that due to your circumstances, something needs to happen now. Why is he not making it happen? And God is saying, because your anxiousness, your need to be in control, and your lack of belief is blocking me from moving. If you want God to move, you have to operate in faith. If you want God to move, you have to approach him in faith, not in anxiousness, not in lack of trust, not in unbelief, but in faith. In this season of your life, you need to learn how to be a passenger seat princess. I've been on social media a lot lately, and a passenger seat princess is something that I've been hearing a lot of women say. And that is basically like when you're in a relationship and you have a man, you want him to drive, and you just sit in the passenger seat and you just enjoy the ride. You kick your feet up, you get so relaxed. He takes you wherever you need to go. Like you just up there living it up in the passenger seat. And I see so many girls who are like, yes, I'm in my passenger seat princess phase. I want to be a passenger seat princess. And when I seen this, I immediately thought, in this season of your life, you need to be a passenger seat princess on your journey to your breakthrough with God. Too many of us are trying to drive the car from the passenger seat. Have you ever been in the car and you're the one driving and you have somebody who's in the passenger seat trying to tell you how to drive? Because for me, it's my mom. Every time I get in the car with my mom and I'm driving, she loves to tell me what to do from the passenger seat. She'd be like, go the speed limit. You're going too fast. You need to turn this way. Put your blinker on. And I'll be looking at her and I'm like, girl, do you want to drive? Too many of us are supposed to be in the passenger seat and God is supposed to be in the driver's seat. But we have been trying to dictate how God drives. We have been trying to tell God, go this speed limit, go a little faster, go a little slower, put your turn signal on, turn over here. And God is looking at you like, do you want to drive? Are you going to let me drive the car, or do you want to get out the passenger seat and get in the driver's seat? Because right now, you're trying to drive the car when you're supposed to be surrendering. You're trying to lead the way when you're supposed to be following. In this season, you need to learn how to be a passenger seat princess. You need to learn how to sit your behind in the passenger seat, kick your feet up, and allow God to do what he needs to do. Allow God to drive you to where y'all need to go. God is the only person who can drive your car better than you. He is the only person who can steer you through everything. He does not need your directions in this season. He does not need your help in this season. He does not need your lead. He needs you to follow, not lead. He needs you to sit in the passenger seat and look pretty while he drives you to your breakthrough. And the only way that God is going to be able to actually drive you to your breakthrough is by you releasing your anxiousness. And the first way to release anxiousness is every single time that you start to feel anxiety, every single time that you start to feel eager, take a step back and slow down. If you've been listening to me this entire episode, then you know that I said the problem is not that you feel anxious. You are going to feel anxious on your journey. It is natural for those emotions to arise while you are on this journey. But the problem comes when you start operating in it. The problem comes when you start sitting in it. The problem comes when you start trying to move into the things that God is telling you to do, to move into God's instructions, into God's plans, but you're doing it in a state of anxiousness. So anxiousness is going to arise. But when it arises, you have a decision to make. Are you going to release it, or are you going to operate in it? Because if you continue to operate in it, then everything that we discussed is going to be what is going to continue to happen in your life. But the way that you release it is you take a step back. You say, you know what? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling panicked. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling stressed. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to calm down, and I'm not going to move into the things that God tells me to do. I'm not going to move on the thing that God told me to do until I feel peace, until I feel calm, until I am no longer in this state of anxiousness, until I am no longer in this state of panic. Have you ever dreamed of making your voice heard and sharing your message with the world? Well, it's time to turn that dream into a reality by starting your very own podcast. I understand that many aspiring podcasters are held back by the worries of cost, complexity, and the time it takes to launch a podcast. That is why I'm excited to announce my new training program that has all the tools and knowledge you need to launch your very own podcast for free. My training will guide you through every single step of your podcast journey. You will learn how to plan, release, market, and grow your podcast from start to finish. So if you're ready to take a leap of faith and share your message with the world, click the link in the description below to access my new podcast training. Now let's get back to the show. And not only do you want to take a step back, but when you take a step back, you want to go to God and you want to give that anxiety to Him. What good will it do to just take a step back and not do anything? Because the anxiety is not going to go away on its own. What that would do is that would just be you avoiding it. You're avoiding your anxiety and you're avoiding doing the things that God told you to do. But when you take a step back and you immediately go to God, you're telling Him, hey, I am acknowledging that this is a problem. I am acknowledging that this feeling is a problem. I am acknowledging, yes, I want to continue to be obedient and do the things that you called me to do. But first, I need you to help me by taking this anxiety away from me and giving me peace. So we're going to go to God and we're going to ask Him, God, take this anxiety away from me and give me peace in this season. And if you're somebody where you are unsure on if you've been operating from a place of anxiousness, then the third thing that I want you to do is I want you to study your moves. When you think about the things that you have been doing to get to where God promised to take you, are you doing it God's way? And if you are doing it God's way, are you doing it in a way that honors Him? Are you taking God's plan and trying to make it to work? Maybe you're following God's steps, but you're trying to make it happen now when God intended for it to happen in a month. Are you doing God's way in a way that honors Him? Are you doing God's way in the way that He anointed you to do it? Are you doing God's way at all? Are you doing your own way? Are you crafting your own plans? Have you turned your back on the things God told you to do to try and figure something out yourself? Have you turned your back on the things God told you to do because you don't feel like doing it right now, because you don't like it, because it makes you uncomfortable? Because in order for you to do that, you have to face an insecurity. Study your moves. How are you moving? Is the way that you're moving aligned with God? And is it aligned in a way that He wants you to move in that? And if you need help with understanding if you are moving according to God's plan, then check out the Royal Faith Journal. Because the Royal Faith Journal helps you on your faith journey from start to finish. And one of the first steps is making sure that the things that you are doing is aligned to God's plan. And so if you want more information on the Royal Faith Journal, make sure that you click the link in the description. And the last thing that you want to do is you want to prove your trust to God. Because like I said, anxiousness is unbelief. And when you operate in that anxiousness, you are proving to God that you don't trust Him. You are proving to God that you don't believe what He's saying. And so you want to prove your trust to God by taking a step back and waiting. Yes, I know that it looks like time is running out. Yes, I know that it looks like nothing is happening. Yes, I know that it looks like you are not moving. But I trust you so much that I'm going to wait. And you don't have to wait a long time. If you have till the end of the month, I'm not saying wait till the end of the month to see what God does. Wait a couple days. Do not panic. Do not go looking for a solution and panic because you have a deadline until you need to get done what you need to get done. Wait an hour. Give God some time to actually prove himself to you. Because sometimes the reason why you're not seeing God move is because you're moving so fast that you're not even allowing God to do anything. You're so anxious that you're out seeking an answer before you allow God to actually give you an answer. So if you would just take a moment, take an hour, take a day, take a couple days, depending on how much time you have, take a week to sit back and allow God to do what he wants to do. He will be so appreciative that you are actually showing him that you have faith, and watch how he starts to answer you. Watch how you start to get clarity. Watch how you start to feel his presence. Watch how he starts to give you peace in this season. And so remember, moving in anxiousness only blocks your discernment, keeps you in a state of confusion, makes you feel like you are forcing God's hand, and keeping you in a state of panic. Your anxiousness is your need to be in control. Is you wanting to dictate how, when, why, where, and what happens to you. And this causes you to rush God when you need to be in a season of being a passenger seat princess. The only way for you to stop operating in anxiousness is to release it. And you do that by, when you feel it, taking a step back and slowing down. Giving that anxiousness and that anxiety to God and asking him to give you peace. Studying your moves. Improving your trust to God by taking a break and waiting. But that is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe so that you get a notification every time a new episode is released. Also, leave a review and let me and others know how you are enjoying the show. And if you want to stay connected, follow me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at Prospering with Christ. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you next week.